This is PTV World. I am Syed Shabahat Ali and you're watching Fault Lines. The relationship between India and Pakistan have remained troubled mostly during last 73 years. Both the countries have fought three full-scale wars and had many skirmishes with each other without any major accomplishment for peace. India has been blatantly lying about Pakistan's role in supporting terrorism inside India, while Pakistan has provided irrefutable evidence of Indians' patronage of the militant outfits in Pakistan as well as coordinating terror attacks in the country. The abrogation of Article 37A and its consequent administrative annexation of Kashmir has taken the crisis further. However, both the countries have announced a sudden and rare reaffirmation of 2003 ceasefire agreement, pledging to bring a halt to violence that killed at least 74 people in 2020 alone. Our team has prepared a package to summarize the recent developments. Watch the package before we bring our first guest to the program.
India and Pakistan have had a whirlpool history with an animosity that led to two major wars and several standoffs. This whirlpool, however, also includes attempts at peace, such as the Composite Peace Dialogue and the Comprehensive Peace Dialogue. The recent recommitment to the 2003 ceasefire arrangement at the line of control agreed to address the cardinal problems that undermine peace, not only between the two countries, but also in South Asia. It concurred on reviving the existing mechanisms such as hotline contact and flag meetings to further avoid misunderstandings. These steps are welcomed by both the states and come after a recent downfall in bilateral relations between the two countries. In the year 2020, India violated ceasefire line approximately 3,000 times, in which 28 people were martyred. Moreover, Narendra Modi-led regime has been vehemently oppressive against Kashmiris and vitriolic towards Pakistan. The Pulwama Balakot incident severely dented the bilateral relationship, which was only intensified after August 5th abrogation of Article 370, thereby making Kashmir issue the flashpoint of Indo-Pak conflict. In an interview with Karan Thapar in late 2020, Dr. Moeed Yusuf shared that India had expressed a desire to hold talks with Pakistan, and rightly so. With a meeting of both countries' Directors General Military Operations, Islamabad and Delhi are stepping towards a new era of peace. However, seeing that Pakistani Premier Imran Khan, Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa and Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi all have reiterated the significance of Kashmir issue multiple times and at multiple forums, is it possible for peace to ensue unless the resolution of Kashmir issue?
To join me in the first segment of my program is Pakistan's permanent representative in the United Nations, Ambassador Munir Akram, who's joining me live from Geneva. He's also the President of Economic and Social Council of United Nations. Ambassador Sahab, welcome to my program. Tell me, India has made a lot of efforts to diplomatically isolate Pakistan in the communities of the nation. Pakistan certainly has done a lot of efforts to overcome this vicious plan from India. How your office has worked on it, and can you tell us a bit more detail about this Indian design?
First of all, we should not accept the Indian denomination that they are trying to isolate Pakistan, because Pakistan cannot be isolated. We are a prominent member of the international community. We are the fifth largest country by population. We are an important player in the region, within the Islamic world, within the United Nations. So, by definition, Pakistan cannot be isolated, because India's own reality is becoming exposed to the world. And Pakistan, during the tenure of Prime Minister Imran Khan, has played an active role in exposing the reality of what is India. India's policies in Jammu and Kashmir, India's policies towards Indian Muslims, India's policies in the region, all of them expose the nature of the regime which rules India today. And it is not a pretty sight. And people at the popular level, at the level of individual people in various parts of the world, including the Western world, they recognize the nature of this new India, which has a fascist face, which has a ideology of hate against Muslims and other minorities. And this is not a pretty face, and we have to expose it in order to change India's policies and accept, enable it to accept, to apply the principles of the United Nations Charter in its dealings with Pakistan.
Ambassador Sahab, FATF was an effort, as viewed in Islamabad, to financially strangulate Pakistan. And in order to overcome the challenge that apparently looked like a daunting task, there was a two-pronged approach by the government, as we understand. One was on the economic management side, and the second one was on the diplomatic front, where your office has been a front runner. Can you tell us more about it, please?
I think that there are two aspects to the FATF story. First of all, there is the aspect of the need to have transparency in financial transactions in order to ensure the integrity of transactions and the honesty of transactions. I think, as you know, Pakistan has seen an outflow of a lot of our own precious resources through corruption and crime flowing out of the country, and the Prime Minister has spoken about this very eloquently. And therefore, we need to tighten our financial regulations, our financial laws to ensure against criminal transfers and criminal behavior. Now, some of these criminal transfers have also involved us with certain terrorists and certain terrorist organizations. And that exposure has enabled our enemy, i.e., India, with the support of some of its own allies, to exert financial pressure on Pakistan by threatening to downgrade us into the grey list and black list that the FATF adheres to. Our disadvantage diplomatically has been that we are not a member of this, the oversight body in FATF. And this is an oversight that was made in the past, that we were not part of this body. And that has exposed us to the pressure from India and the machinations of India in order to exert pressure on Pakistan. So in order to avert this pressure, to avert the objectives of India, we have to first improve our own regulations and laws in order to ensure that we have nothing that can be pointed a finger at. And then secondly, we need to rectify whatever has happened in the past. Now, Pakistan's diplomacy, of course, has tried to expose the difference between the two. The difference between legitimate desire to have good regulations and the illegitimate desire of our enemy in order to harm the economic fortunes and economic development of Pakistan. And I think we have to a considerable extent exposed the Indian machinations of exerting pressure on Pakistan. But they will continue, and we will continue to frustrate them.
Ambassador Sahab, Imran Khan's speech in the United Nations General Assembly has set the stage in the world to understand the issue of Kashmir to a deeper dimension. It is widely believed in Pakistan that Pakistan's case with regards to Kashmir has never been that eloquently fought in United Nations, as was fought by the Prime Minister himself. Now, this must be taken forward. This momentum cannot be stopped, and it then becomes responsibility of a mission in United Nations. How are you taking this mission forward, and what have we accomplished after the UNGA summit so far?
I think we have been engaged in a diplomatic campaign ever since the Prime Minister's path-breaking speech at the United Nations, where he spoke openly and from the heart about the Kashmir cause and Pakistan's commitment to the Kashmir cause. For the first time after almost 50 years, Pakistan brought the issue to the Security Council. We had been reluctant in the past. Past governments had been reluctant to do so, but we took a bold step and a decision by the Prime Minister to take it to the Security Council. The Security Council has now discussed it on 3 occasions, the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. And those discussions are important both from a political point of view as well as a legal point of view. This has kept the issue of Jammu and Kashmir alive on the agenda. It is on the active agenda of the Security Council, and we will try to keep it alive because it exerts pressure on India. It also underlines the fact that Jammu and Kashmir is an international dispute. It is not an integral part of India as the Indians claim. So the existence of the dispute, the existence of the legal basis of the dispute has to be kept up and raised at the United Nations, and the Security Council is the highest body. The Security Council is a place which has taken the decisions to resolve the Kashmir dispute through a plebiscite. So we have to keep raising it, even though India has friends in the Council, permanent members who may frustrate decisions, but we will need to keep up the pressure and keep raising the issue in the Security Council. But apart from that, in the human rights, this is a wide-ranging campaign. We have raised it in every forum at the United Nations. In the Human Rights Council, over 50 countries joined us in a joint statement right after 5 August measures and denounced the Indian unilateral measures that were taken. 18 special rapporteurs of the Human Rights Council have sent 2 joint communications to the Indian government asking questions on various aspects of human rights, on summary executions, on disappearances, on collective punishment, on the treatment of journalists, a whole range of issues where they have said that human rights are in free fall in India, and especially in Jammu and Kashmir. India has to respond to this, and we will keep up the pressure on India to respond to this. The High Commissioner for Human Rights wants to go to India and to the Pakistani side of Jammu and Kashmir, to the Indian side of Jammu and Kashmir. She has asked to go to both sides of Jammu and Kashmir. We are ready to receive her. India is not ready to receive her. So the pressure, we will maintain that pressure. International human rights organizations, civil society, legislators, parliamentarians have all spoken out. We will have to keep the momentum of pressure on India, because it is only through pressure, only when the major governments begin to question India's record and India's policies, that those policies will change. And therefore, we need to maintain that pressure, and we will keep that pressure up.
Pakistan has given the proofs of Indian involvement, as we understand, in patronizing terrorism as well as orchestrating these attacks on Pakistan's civil and military installations within the country. This pattern of terrorism has almost come to a major halt ever since Indian spy has been arrested from Pakistan and his case has been presented to the International Court of Justice. Your office is also taking a lead in presenting all these evidences to the United Nations and contesting Pakistan's case in the League of the Nations. Tell us about it. What response have we received from United Nations so far?
You know, after our government prepared a composite dossier of India's sponsorship of terrorism in Pakistan. We were sent the dossier, and I shared that with the Secretary General, and the Secretary General has promised that they will study the dossier very carefully, and they will come back to us with responses to the evidence that has been provided. We have also written to the Security Council and asked the Security Council committee, which lists the terrorist organization associated with Al Qaeda and ISIS. Those we have written to them, and we have asked for a meeting, a consultation, investigation of the allegations of India's support to the TTP and to the JUA. We have specifically asked for that investigation. Some of India's friends have blocked that discussion, and we are going to keep pressing them to open that discussion. Of course, India is now sitting in the Security Council itself and is likely to block discussions, but we will keep up the pressure, and we are going to raise it in all ancillary organs of the Security Council and apprise the monitoring team, the Office of Counter-Terrorism, etc. We have kept them apprised of India's activities in sponsoring terrorism against Pakistan. And the objective is to expose this, and to expose this in front of the international community. And I think we are succeeding to expose the fact that India sponsors terrorism against Pakistan, TTP, JUA, Baluch separatists. So we will have to maintain that effort, and we are hopeful that once we have a settlement in Afghanistan, that India will lose the ungoverned spaces from which it is sponsoring that terrorism against Pakistan.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Akram, for your participation in our show. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break here and we'll join you back in the second segment of the program with two more guests. Stay with us. Welcome back. So in the second part of this program, I have two distinguished guests with me, both on Skype. I have Sitara Noor. She's Senior Analyst and a Research Fellow on Center of Aerospace and Security Studies. And I have Majid Hydari, who's a freelance journalist based in Srinagar. Ms. Sitara, I'll start from you. Tell me, how optimistic are you about this ice melting between both the sides, as we see both the sides are now exchanging pleasantries with each other?
If we look at how Indian government's behavior is, we do not see any change in the heart and mind of the Modi government. And that is why we see that their intention is more to divert attention from the human rights violation that they are doing in OJK, and also against minorities within India. And this engagement perhaps is more to divert attention from what is happening internally at home, and less driven by the real effort to develop some with end goal of peace in the region. And when we look at it with this half-hearted approach, I do not see that this would actually lead to the ultimate objective, that is for us, from Pakistan side or from the Kashmir side as well, would be resolution of the Kashmir issue. So it has to be a comprehensive process where all parties' grievances are addressed, where some changes are made on the ground, which Pakistan's demand has been always that India has to reverse the August 5th situation. And that would be the step forward to lead. So I am optimistic, but I'm very much skeptical as well, because in my view, the external pressure would not lead to the ultimate objective of conflict resolution, which should be primarily our objective as well.
Majid, you just heard what the sentiment is here in Islamabad. What do you think? This relaxation in an offensive posture that India has essentially kept against Pakistan, importantly ever since the Modi regime is in control, do you think this relaxation in the offensive posture is sufficient for Pakistan to realize that India is very sincere in the peace process at the moment?
Well, see, Syed Saab, India and Pakistan are not just two neighbors. They enjoy and share an emotional bond which is much stronger than the imaginary line dividing the two countries. And if a beginning has been made on this front that India and Pakistan are re-engaging into some peace negotiations per se, so we should appreciate that. Essentially because both India and Pakistan have come closer with regard to the military ties, firstly, that both the countries have reiterated the ceasefire agreement. That is point number one. The point number two is that the premiers of both the countries have exchanged some pleasantries. They have even greeted each other. Modi ji has sent a letter of Shifai Kamala, we would say, to Imran Khan Saab, and he too has reciprocated. So some beginning has been made, and even with regard to the Indus Water Treaty, recently we had the commissioners of the Indus Water Treaty from both the countries meeting in New Delhi and passing a resolution which said the meeting was held cordially and the next meeting will be held in Pakistan, the way it used to happen in the past. So some good beginning has been made. And we need to be optimistic with regard to India-Pakistan relations. And I would say the onus lies more on Pakistan to improve ties with India. Why I say so is because Pakistan is an Islamic republic, and Muslims believe our faith is that we need to keep cordial and good relations with our neighbors, whether or not they are from our faith or not. So there, Pakistan has a more of a responsibility with regard to this. And we need to be optimistic for Indo-Pak relations on the whole, not necessarily with regard to some specifics, but if a beginning has been made, as we say that our belief is now midi kufr hai, let's believe and be optimistic about what has been the step forward during the past 2 months, I believe.
Sitara,
Yes,
has
so what do you-
Pakistan not been doing the most of the work when it comes to the effort of bringing peace in subcontinent? Have Pakistan not been the side that have been ignoring India's offenses in all these different places where Pakistan has been pointed out, and Pakistan has tried to fight its case in a diplomatic manner? Do you agree with this statement that has come from the Indian side?
You see, we have to look at it in a more broader manner. If we look at what Pakistan behavior has been, when Prime Minister Imran Khan took office, the first statement that he made was that if India takes first step, Pakistan would take two. And that had been the consistent policy all along. And if we look at how Pakistan behaved during the Balakot crisis, this was very much driven by the objective of peace in mind. And the way Pakistan handled the situation, the way Pakistan handled India's aggression, which was very aggressive by all means, but the way Pakistan handled that situation, that actually shows Pakistan's sincerity towards the objective of peace. But I think both parties have to be together in the peace process. And as I said earlier, if this current amelioration process leads to another set of confidence-building measures, which is good, I think it would increase the confidence, it would increase people-to-people contact. But what would be the next step? Because I always say that confidence-building measures has a shelf life. It has to be complemented with sincere efforts to resolving the basic issues. In India-Pakistan's case, that's Kashmir issue. But there has been less interest from the Indian side on that part, and that's very unfortunate. And I think this time around, if we are giving peace a chance, which from Pakistan side I think has been the statement all along. So I think India must show some sincerity, and more effort should be from the Indian side to actually bring some change, constructive change on the Kashmir front. If that would not be the case, I think another cycle of confidence building measures would end up the way they have ended previously, because every time there is a crisis, confidence building measures have been the first casualty. And this is going to be the same if we did not realize, both countries did not put in great effort, the real effort in resolving the primary issue.
But Sitara, tell me if, as it is often said, that Pakistan is overstressing on the issue of Kashmir and is not giving a chance to peace by, initiating trade and, other confidence building measures or, relaxing the trade and tourism between the two countries. Can Pakistan, for the sake of an argument, let Kashmir issue be forgotten for a while and can do the peace talks with India? You think it is a plausible option for Pakistan at the moment?
You see, Kashmir cannot be forgotten per se. I mean, this is something which I think is being perceived in the other side, that Kashmir. I mean, this broadly construed from the statement of the Chief of Army Staff. But I think the purpose here is that, of course, Pakistan has always been of the opinion that, of course, we can have a broad-ranging talks. We need to have a broad-ranging discussion sessions, and we need to give peace a chance only because only the people of the two countries are suffering if situation does not get better. And on Pakistan side, I think Pakistan had taken a number of measures in that regard. Kartarpur being one example, where Pakistan, for the sake of people, for the sake of the people from across the border, it has facilitated quite a lot of. So Pakistan have been sincere in its effort to kind of, create that conducive environment. But it takes two to tango. And if there is no reciprocity from the Indian side, and if there is no same sentiment shared from the Indian side, I think Pakistan alone cannot guarantee peace. And as far as Kashmir is concerned, I think that will continue to be the primary issue. I mean, there have been instances where countries had engaged in the trade, the countries have engaged in the people-to-people contact, and which is very much welcome development. And I think this time around, this should also be the case. But how it evolved, how the situation evolved afterwards, whenever there was a crisis, and crisis has always erupted from Kashmir, these all steps, all these confidence building measures have been the first casualty of the crisis. And instead of playing that primary role which they were meant for, that is building confidence, they just the entire development between the two countries rolled back, and everybody was back to the square one. So I think
Point
there
well
is
taken,
enough
Sitara. Let me
realization.
have a word with Majid. Majid, it is widely believed in Pakistan that the secular and peace-loving India is now transformed into a state where the religious identification is playing a very important role in deciding the fate and fortune of the people. The Muslims are under stress, and while Modi regime has been propagating against Pakistan in their election campaign, it is very unlikely for them to do some actual measures to do peace with Pakistan. How plausible do you think this will be?
See, firstly, war has never been a solution to any dispute between India and Pakistan. We have seen that in the last 70 years. And then since the time these two states became nuclear powers, any war between two nuclear nations can mean mutual disaster. So both the countries, India and Pakistan, realize that. As with regard to the right-wing government in India at the moment, see, the right-wing voters, firstly, it is BJP is about their voters, who are always seen as somebody being anti-Pakistan, and they don't want any good relations with Pakistan. But now the prime minister of the same country, who represents the entire country and especially his voters, greeting Prime Minister of Pakistan with some very good words is a clear-cut message that now India is also showing some flexibility towards improvement of relations with Pakistan. And it's not the first time it has happened. Even at the time when Nawaz Sharif Sahab was the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi ji made a halt there and he came to greet him. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also been making some efforts for good relations. In the past, it got affected for some reasons, but now, as we also know, there could be some back-channel diplomacies behind this, which are pushing the two countries, but both the countries are showing some sincerity, and we need to see that this can be taken forward. In the past, India and Pakistan have had trade of almost $3 billion a year, so that can be resumed because it can be beneficial for both the countries. Then we have had cultural exchanges in particular. We have seen the celebrities from Pakistan enjoying even bigger celebrity factor and fame in India, as we have seen in case of Adnan Sami, in case of Mahira Khan, in case of Fawad Khan. But in the last 5 years, all those things got affected, especially with regard to Bollywood cultural exchanges. Now the time has come that when we are neighbors and we can't afford war, the only possible peaceful and sustainable way is dialogue. And that is what is needed at the moment. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his stand, has made his position clear that yes, he is willing for a hand of friendship with Pakistan, and now it's time for Pakistan to reciprocate accordingly. Yes, that is what I would say here.
Sitara, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has recently refused to resume normalization of trade with India. How do you quickly comment on that?
You see, this has given actually some confused messaging from Pakistan's side, and I think this is certainly not helpful in my view, because first of all, Pakistan need to have a clear-cut policy. Whichever way we want to go, we have to have a clear stance, and the confusion is certainly not helpful. So, notwithstanding this confusion, I think the decision was made in the best interest of the people initially, but then when we look at the larger picture, as the statements coming from the government also show that now this is contingent upon the reversal of August 5th decision from India, which has been Pakistan's consistent policy before that. But as I said, I would go back to my initial point where I said that this process or this amelioration or rapprochement, which we possibly hoping to see, is driven more by external pressure and less by internal desires. And as Sayed Saab also referred to this letter from the Prime Minister Modi, I think that letter was very well taken. But again, he again has gone back to the point of terrorism, in which in the letter he categorically mentioned that. So India and Pakistan seem to get stuck to the same position where India does not want to talk about anything beyond terrorism, and Pakistan does not want to engage unless August 5th position is reversed in India. But I think...
comment on what Ms. Sitara has said. How would you evaluate the situation?
See, I partially agree with Sitara Sahiba when she said the policy of Pakistan at the moment looks confused as how to engage with India at the moment. Because you see, India has made its stand clear. They say, come what may, Kashmir is integral part of India, and now it has fully integrated with India. And so there is no question of any foreign this dialogue on Kashmir or even with the neighbors for that matter. India has made its position clear. But when we see both the militaries of both the countries engaging into a new peace settlement with regard to ceasefire on the LOC and the LAC, and then we see the commissioners of Indus Water Treaty meeting, and then we see one step being taken by Pakistan to say, let's start the trade with India, but then that is being withheld because of a cabinet intervention. So all this shows that India is clear on its stand for friendship, but maybe they don't want to talk on Kashmir. But Pakistan is confused with regard to how to deal with India's relation with the neighbor, but with regard to Kashmir. So that is where the problem lies. And the biggest issue is that, unfortunately, nobody looks concerned about what the people of Kashmir want. The people of Kashmir essentially want a solution which brings in sustainable peace and prosperity and dignity for the people. Common people are not concerned about the politics. They are not concerned about the nation states.
People of Kashmir want cannot be decided by you and me. It can only be decided by a plebiscite that India has been shying away of despite its commitment in the United Nations.
See, Sayasab, I don't think the issue is of the plebiscite. The issue is even not of engaging somebody from the foreign quarters to deal with Kashmir. The simple demand of Kashmiri people is that they want sustainable peace, because every day we have somewhere a killing. In the last 1 week, 10 persons have been killed, including 5 security personnel in Kashmir. So people want end to killings, end to bloodshed. They want sustainable peace, which brings in peace and prosperity with dignity for the people. That is the simple demand. That has been the simple demand of the people of Kashmir. But yes, there is a hope that if India and Pakistan engage into dialogue with some focus on Kashmir, this kind of a resolution where you have sustainable peace and prosperity with dignity for the people of Kashmir is possible. Indians at the moment, the entire India believes Modi hai to mumkin hai. In Pakistan also you have a moment that Imran Khan is seen as the Bhaijan. So when you have Modi hai to mumkin hai and Bhaijan on the other side, why can't there be a dialogue which brings peace in Kashmir? Our concern for Kashmir is a resolution which brings in peace. And unfortunately, we have been confusing it with what people should politically demand. No, people have no genuine big political demand for that matter. Sorry. They simply want peace and prosperity, sustainable peace. That has been the demand which has
Mr.
been
Majid,
ignored.
thank you very much, Madam Sitara, for participating in my program. It's such a pleasure and honor to have both of you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break and we'll join with third and last segment of the program. Stay with us. Welcome back to the last segment of the program, and I have with me Mr. Amar Ghori, the editor of The News, Islamabad. He's joining me on Skype from London. Amar Saab, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Abad.
Sir, tell me, we are discussing this relationship between India and Pakistan that have apparently started to look slightly better in the last few days or last few weeks. Why is all of this happening at the moment in the strategic context of whatever is happening in subcontinent? Why now India is so desirous to have friendly relationship, if they are desirous at all?
I think, this is an important question, but I don't think that India is desiring. See it as cosmetic posturing, because we know that, the regional developments require India to pretend, or at least portray a face that it is at peace with its neighbors, especially if, for example, India is trying to develop relations with the United States the way they are going, their own plans for the new region, which always used to be there, the Asia Pacific, but now since 2018, renamed and recalled the Indo-Pacific region, and the design of the America and America's allies in this region, namely Japan, Australia, Britain, under their new program, which is called Global Britain. So I think India actually wants to say that, listen, we actually are not only at peace with our neighbors, we are trying to create peace with countries with which we are not at peace. And because Pakistan and India have been regularly, engaged on cross-border firing, and in the recent past we have seen the situation has gone, beyond just firing on the line of control. We saw the downing of, the Indian planes and what actually happened. We all know that. So I think this is, more or less cosmetic, because now India is also partner in, regional associations like SCO, and the engagement with China and Moscow. If you basically create a picture, this is a message which is coming from Delhi that, listen, despite all those things which they want from Islamabad, and in their own opinion, Islamabad is not doing, India is desirous of peace, and is literally lending a hand.
Amar Saab, if I say that their vulnerabilities and weaknesses have been very evident after opening two fronts, one with China and one with Pakistan, and they have eventually realized that the cost of this coercion is perhaps too much than what Indian economy can afford at the moment. Would you agree with my statement, or would you disagree with that?
I think to a large extent, I would disagree. I'm sorry. India, the trajectory on which India is, I think in the last few years, India has, created a new direction for itself, where it sees itself not as a regional power, it sees as an international power. And that is why it is basically, trying to portray that weight, whether it's relationship in the region or, with the Middle East and beyond, with Europe and America. So I don't think that there are vulnerabilities. Yes, fears are definitely there, and those fears were magnified when China President Xi launched his BRI program, and then we many developments in the region, like for example CPAC was one manifestation of that relationship. So maybe, China's presence in Sri Lanka, although a lot of criticism in international press about China developing the Hambantota port and basically trying to, in India's version and India's friends' version, tomorrow's, the sea lanes of the Indian Ocean. So maybe, to that extent, India might kind of feel boxed that its western, all of the western flank is covered by Pakistan, which is a nuclear neighbor, and on India's head, China is sitting, from start to end, from south to north, from east to west, and then on the other side, India is not very comfortable. For example, tomorrow, if China's relationship develop with Dhaka and Bangladesh, the way we see a lot of development is actually happening, despite Prime Minister Modi going to Dhaka recently on their Independence Day celebrations. So I think India might feel boxed, but the thing is, you cannot change geography. And looking at the India's size, looking at the bilateral relationship between the bilateral economic relationship between India and China, I think we tend to read too much into the situation, that maybe India is frightened of its neighbors, and that's why they are trying to behave in a certain way. Border skirmishes, we have been actually having those. We have actually have had wars with them, but that does not mean that Pakistan is facing, sort of a situation vis-a-vis India where we feel threatened beyond a certain point.
Amir Sahab, some international commentators are saying that the peace process going on in Afghanistan is a reason why United States wants India to diffuse crisis with Pakistan and become a part of the peace process in Afghanistan, where Pakistan is actually not very comfortable with India getting an increasing role in that. Do you think India would be happy to have a peaceful Afghanistan in neighborhood of Pakistan, while Pakistan has been blaming and rather has given irrefutable evidence of Indian involvement in terrorist activities inside Pakistan with the use of some factions of Afghan militants?
I think because of the nature of the problem in Afghanistan, and the length of the problem, almost over 40 years now, India found it sort of to its advantage that if it actually creates a presence in Afghanistan, it will make Pakistan nervous from both sides, from east and also west. But the question we actually ask is the billion-dollar question: whether Pakistan actually wants peace and whether India wants peace in Afghanistan. I think they have different sides to support. As long as both these countries are not supporting a wholesome, effort, I don't think that whatever India is doing in Afghanistan and whatever Pakistan is hoping to get, whatever is actually happening, whether it's happening in Doha, whether it's happening in Turkey now or Moscow. We have seen, Afghan leaders going to Saudi Arabia, different regional headquarters. Nothing comes out of it beyond, a meeting and beyond conferences. So India, as long as, India, does not get what it wants, and what it wants is definitely what Pakistan does not want. So because Pakistan is supporting, different actors, and India is behind what India is supporting, what America is supporting in Afghanistan, a government which is pretended or presented to us as a popularly elected government in Afghanistan. But we know for a fact that, and I remember many years ago, I asked this question personally to President Karzai when he was president, that if Western forces are pulled out of Afghanistan fully, whether the popularly elected president and the leadership of Afghanistan would be, free and able to roam around in Afghanistan, go beyond the green zone, go beyond the protected areas. And President Karzai at that time, he was actually having a joint press conference with, at that time, the British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and he said, "No, I won't be able to do that." And the situation, I don't know how long, how far it has developed and progressed from that. I think. As long as there are different factions within Afghanistan, and as long as those factions do not come to an end, India would be biding and betting on different parties to what Pakistan is supporting in that country. And that is why I think whatever the aspirations from the American and its allies, I think situation is now changing pretty fast, and especially what we have seen recently, the new pact between Iran and China. I don't think that America's presence and America's promises to leave that area will come to fruition now. Why would America now leave Afghanistan the way it promised, when it sees that it needs to keep an eye on whatever China is trying to kind of do in Central Asia and Iran, and trying to kind of open a new route, beyond CPAC. So I think whatever the design of the international forces, America and its allies, Western allies, and vis-a-vis what India is doing in this region, I think saying that it actually wants peace is one thing, but practice is completely different.
Thank you very much, Amir Saab, and it was such a pleasure to have you on my show. Thank you very much for your participation at the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our program for this week. In the closing, I would only say that this is a region of 1.5 billion people. Both the countries are armed with nuclear weapons. Coercion and war is not an option. The only way forward is for a positive peace is a wholehearted effort from the statesmen of both the sides. We will join you next week with another program. Until then, Allah Hafiz.